Hey everyone, welcome back to CES 2012. I am here with Sony's John Koller. John, how are you doing?
I'm great. It's a great show.
Yeah, we're here to talk about some hardware. You've got the Vita, the PS3, PSP. So one of the big things that Sony was talking about last night as part of the press conference was this Sony Entertainment Network. Why should gamers be excited with this? Is it just the PlayStation Network, or?
Well, the Sony Entertainment Network is really our connective tissue, so it connects all of our devices, not just PlayStation devices, but really all Sony devices, and that's, I think, what makes it really interesting, because it can connect all the different content pieces as well. Sony's a great content house, right? We've got pictures and music, we've got great electronics, and we have PlayStation, and it's like nice to be able to connect all those things and those pieces together. So some of the things we announced yesterday, talking about Music Unlimited, talking about Video Unlimited, opportunities for consumers to be able to experience that on their PS3 and eventually on their PlayStation Vita.
So it's mostly more of a non-gaming related thing, is that fair?
Well, there's gaming elements as well. I mean, I think once you look at where Sony Entertainment Network is going, when you go to the PlayStation Network, that's under the umbrella of Sony Entertainment Network. So if you're downloading content for your PlayStation 3 or your Vita, you're ultimately going to the Sony Entertainment Network. It's kind of the broad umbrella for all the content, and gaming's part of that.
So it's mostly just getting all the devices on the same page, right? All right. So some of the other tech you talked about some pretty cool tech last night. You had the 4K projectors, the SSAR2 speakers. Should gamers are these cool things for gamers, or are we going to see any of that?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that you saw yesterday that are cool for gamers. You mentioned two of them. There's a specific kind of core type of consumer that I think would enjoy some of those types of tech pieces. Ultimately what we really have focused on in particular is the content. And so you talk about games, that's an easy one. We can talk about that. But also the apps and things, ways that you can accent your experience in ways that maybe we haven't done in the past. Particularly on Vita, we've talked a lot about how we want to bring communication and community in together. We don't want to be an insular, kind of singular personal device. We want it to be all of us play together. Some of the things we talked about yesterday allow for that. And the content, the games that are part of that also allow for that too. So, ultimately that was the main message for PlayStation out of the announcements yesterday. I think it's ultimately trying to connect everyone together in a social setting and bringing your gaming community together. That's ultimately what we all want.
So, but Sony's got this big R&D firm. Is PlayStation benefiting, I guess, from being so closely tied to this kind of research?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think of some of the things that we've come out with recently, you look at even something like the 3D monitor that came out of the PlayStation group, but we certainly learned from the Sony Electronics guys. You look at the PlayStation Vita screen here, things that we've learned a lot from the Sony Mobile group now. It used to be Sony Ericsson. Right. We learn a lot. There's a lot of, in Tokyo particularly, a lot of those groups sit together, and so there's a lot of that kind of intra-learning. Certainly in the United States and other territories, on the business side, we work well together. So all the Sonys are starting to come together and work a lot more cohesively. I think for gamers it's really great because they're able to really benefit from the beauty that all this kind of learning on the engineering side can bring to a device like maybe a Vita or a PlayStation 3.
So first week sales for the PS Vita were really, really strong. They kind of tailed off into the second, third week. Was that to be expected? Is it any cause for concern, or what are you thinking there?
Yeah, no concern at all. I mean, I think in terms, you look at, first of all, the word of mouth factor is extremely strong because of people bringing it home and really enjoying it, and that satisfaction rate, as we mentioned, being really high. But also in terms of when we funnel in additional hardware units, that'll dictate how many sales there are and how many you sell through. So, we're still in the first couple of weeks. We're trying to get as many units into market as possible. We're going to give it some time, and I think overall the numbers have been really to forecast. We've been very happy, and again, if the consumer's happy, and it appears that they are, then we're happy as a company, because that means they're going to come back, buy more games, continue to talk about it. And when we launch here in the United States and Canada and Latin America and our whole territory, we want that to be the case too. We want people to go home and say, this is the best device I've ever bought. And I think we'll get that. That's what we're getting out of Japan right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned the number of releases that were available for the Vita. Is there ever a point where you hit like a diminishing returns, like you almost want to limit it in a sense so that people aren't like overwhelmed?
Well, this is a great question, because I think most people would say, why not just keep throwing more games out at once? The reality is there's only so much space at retail, right? So if it's both a retail and a digital device, as the Vita is, you got to have the shelf space, or retail's will say, hey man, we got room for 15 or whatever it is. And so what we've done is we've designed it so that the right amount of games come out at launch, and what we try to do is kind of spread it out through the year. What we really wanted to do, and I think we learned a lot from past most recent handheld device launches,
Right.
is that you don't want to launch and then launch strongly and then go dark for 3 or 4 months and have nothing. You want the consumer to keep coming back into the store, continue to buy, maybe digitally as well, but continue to purchase and continue to be excited. So in subsequent months for Vita, we have launch, then we have MLB, then we got Mortal Kombat, then Resistance, then Little Big Planet, then Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed. And, we've got all these great games that kind of pummel one right after another, month over month. So it's not like we're going to go dark for a long period of time. That, I think, is the right way to position the content. Just make sure you station it in the correct way. And I think that's really what's been amenable to retail as well.
So the Vita is obviously your big hardware launch. Earlier today, Koller said that the PS4 will not be announced at E3. You have the Wii U coming out this year. How does Sony plan on countering it if it's not through hardware?
Well, I mean, I think we feel really confident about the PS3's position in the market now. It's going to be a fantastic year for software coming up. I think there's been a lot of public announcements about some of the games that are coming to PS3 as well as to competitive platforms. I think our position for this year is really going to be, blowing out the game content overall, blowing out Move, and really emphasizing 3D. Those are real key pillars of PlayStation 3. We're starting to see a lot more families coming to the market, buying it for Netflix, buying it for Blu-ray, the streaming capabilities, those types of things. And I think, with the addition of things like Sunday Ticket and the strength of MLB on the sports streaming side, we have a real kind of complete story to tell. And if you're a family coming in, $249 is a much easier price point than maybe where competitive consoles could launch. We don't know where that might be, but we do think that the $249 price point for PS3 is a really good one, given the type of content coming and all the things you can do with it. Still very, very powerful piece of hardware.
So here's a bit of a softball for you. If you own a Vita or if you own a PS3, which are you going to be more excited when E3 comes around?
Can I say both?
No, you can't. That's the one condition.
Because you can play between the two. You do know that, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying both. Let me take that first, just to clarify that point, and then I'll get to answer your question. But for many games, you're going to be able to play what we call cross-platform play. So if you're a PS3 owner and you want to buy a device, Vita is going to be the device that I think you're going to buy. We've seen it in Japan. A lot of PS3 owners have come by and purchased the Vita at retail, and we know those guys best. And so being able to play MLB, stop it on your PS3, continue playing that same game on your Vita is pretty powerful. Or being able to play some games where you and I can play against each other, like Wipeout. You on PS3, me on Vita. So that's a pretty powerful thing. I think overall there's going to be a ton of momentum behind Vita at E3. So the types of announcements with content and those types of things that could really excite that type of consumer. However, to kind of thread the needle, I think it's going to be the same type of consumer. So the same kind of person's going to be excited about both announcements. So being able to play on both PS3 and Vita, I think, will be really the kind of the big announcement, the big things that we'll be talking about at E3.
All right, John. Thanks for talking to us today. That does it for us at CES 2012. Check back with the site for more coverage.